I mean, this is actually the question, isn't it? Because I know that there's a lot of Christians, especially Christian parents, but now a whole younger generation of Christians who kind of struggle about the idea of Halloween. Should we be celebrating it? Some people just have a revulsion to the entire idea because they feel that it is, Satan's day or something to that
Right.
effect. And but at the same time, when the 4-year-old bunny or fairy or Jack Sparrow comes knocking on your door, does that mean you turn off all the lights and hide in the bedroom? Or if your own child wants to be Captain America and go from house to house, what do you say to them? So there's a lot of tension in the Christian community of understanding this. Then, of course, you get like I said, the college parties and the young adults who say, "Well, I like dressing up, and how is
Right.
there a harm in that?" Um, a lot of controversy. Of course, we have to understand that Halloween, even in its name, seems to allude to something Christian, right?
Yeah.
Because what Halloween, the word means, is All Hallows Eve, the eve of the holy day. And originally, uh, one of the ways the church dealt with this was they decided to celebrate All Saints Day
On the following day.
on November 1st,
Right.
right? Which is what it was Pope Boniface the Fourth actually in 609 or 610 decided that he would move All Saints Day from May 13th to November 1st, which is so the church has already been celebrating a day where Christian martyrs were
Yeah.
noted for their sacrifice. And he moved it to November 1st because the celebration of the new year was happening in England and Scotland and things like that. That's what Samhain is. It was a New Year celebration. You notice that this year, for example, Rosh Hashanah is falling in October as well. Many different cultures celebrated the New Year in the fall because it was the start of a whole new growing cycle, and which the harvest had been completed, and now we're going to start a new year, new growing cycle, new planting season until its fruition. And so in the Celtic communities that was happening, and when they started to become converted to Christianity, um, you're not going to say, hey, the one party you have in the year, we're going to cut that out. So
Yeah.
what they did was they put the focus on the martyred saints, and that's kind of how uh, the All Saints Day became November 1st, and then the Hallowed Eve, the holy evening before All Saints Day, became October 31st. So
Yeah.
there's actually a little bit of a Christian underpinning to this, and we can talk a little bit more about what Samhain is and what it did beforehand. But really, we really wanted to understand that just because Halloween has today, the actual word Halloween has become kind of associated with the occult, doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it was always occultic.
Or
It
at least that for a long time it was a Christian holiday, a
right,
Christian day of observation, right? Um, well, I mean, you bring up a point here, and again, it's a theological one. There is a term that has been used throughout church history, or a phrase, I should say. It's called the plundering Egypt, right? Or plundering the riches of Egypt. And of course, it refers back to, I believe, Exodus 12, um, where it says that as the Israelites left the land of Egypt, they took much silver and gold and a lot of the treasures of Egypt with them. Um, and that idea um, later got related to how, as the church expanded in the Roman Empire and continued the mission of spreading the gospel, um, there wasn't an outright abolishment of everything pagan or folk religious that was encountered, but there was something like a redemption of a Christianizing or baptizing of uh, formerly pagan days but now repurposing them um, in light of the Christian revelation claim, right? And Halloween's kind of a good example of that, I suppose, in that, yeah, there was as you said, there was these various Celtic or Druidic uh, days of observation, usually that were connected to something like the cycle of nature, and then they get repurposed um, under the auspices of the church and pointing to Christ in or the saints in this new way, right? So there's sort of like a continuation of the original non-Christian day, but then it's refashioned and repurposed to point to the gospel.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, we're talking about something that is first of all found in nature. It's reflected from nature. So, McBain's Etymological Dictionary of Gaelic says the word Samhain. It's a different kind of a spelling. Basically, the name translates to summer's end. So Samhain just means summer's end. That's what it means. And Gretchen Passantino made the point that these harvest or end of year celebrations, they always generally happened around this time because guess what? Crops live and die, right? The trees will flower and then they lose their leaf. And so what you're seeing, the days grow shorter, especially for the North American and Northern Europe. Anybody north of the equator sees the days grow shorter as this happens. And so people felt that there was a reality of life and death, that people did live. There was a spiritual realm. And they just felt that, well, in this transition state, there must be a thinning of the whatever the veil, the night of the thin veil is how they kind of reference it, these in between times. And so it's just trying to understand and grasp this cyclical aspect of nature, and that's why you see it reflected in so many places. And God did create that cycle of nature. So what the Christians did was they said, well, yes, but death and rebirth is primarily the Christian story. So let's talk about that. And then how the martyrs laid down their lives. That's when they get the closest to that veil, so to speak.
Well, and I think you'd say like that as missionaries went out, as the church went out, the idea was that, well, and I mean Augustine says this, of course, in several places that all truth is God's truth. So there are fingerprints of God in the not just the design of nature, but then there are responses by those who do not have the gospel, some of which might um, be more appropriate kinds of responses to God's design in nature, and others that obviously did not respond well. And Romans 1 and 2 both reference that. Romans 1, 18 through 32, telling us how the pagan nations repress the knowledge of God that is displayed in nature. But then Romans 2 also, where Paul talks that Gentiles who have the law written on their hearts, do the law, in this sort of naturally. So as the church goes out, it sees certain responses of paganism to the design of God's design in nature that are redeemable, and others that clearly are not redeemable and just need to be torn down or rent asunder, so to say, fully abolished, like cannibalism or something like this.